Hello, and welcome to Let Me Tell You a Story podcast, produced by ED Media. Today's story is from the best-selling novel, Journey to the Kingdom of Soul, written by author Everlazt. Chapter 3. The hustle and bustle of the Golona village woke Zahara out of her sleep. She quickly sat up and looked over to her brother. The prince was still sound asleep. Zahara wiped her eyes and tried to decipher the Golona people's native tongue as a group of voices conversed right outside her hut. She quickly gave up on what was being said and shook her brother. Stephen, wake up." The prince stirred, looked around the hut as if he had no idea where he was, sucked his teeth and whined, "Why? I'm still tired." "So am I, but we have to move, we cannot stay in this village," Zahara said and then stood up. Frustrated by the short height of the hut, Zahara sucked her teeth and got down on her knees to talk to her brother. "Why not?" "Because father wanted us to go to the Kingdom of Soul, and that's where we're going. Now get up and let's go," Zahara said with her big sister authority. Stephen mumbled something under his breath, and said, "All right," with all the attitude he could muster before he got up. The Golona village looked like a totally different place than the deserted place from the night before. Children ran around the yard laughing and playing a game Zahara did not quite understand. A few small fires, bubbled pots of various morning dishes, and all were attended by women. A congregation was gathering around what looked like the high priest's daily governing station. Stuhler sat on a chair Zahara would consider a regular seat in the castle, but since the Golona people were no more than 5 feet tall, there was no need to have big chairs in the village. Zahara recognized the men that escorted them to the village standing amongst the congregation. Prince Stephen joined his sister and was amazed at the movement of the people who were no taller than him. Stephen thought the men from the night before were young like him, or short for some other reason. When he laid eyes on the people of the village, Stephen realized the Golona people's natural size was his size. He burst out laughing, causing his sister to give him the evil eye. "Come on," Zahara said as they made their way over to the group. Nalani was sitting on a chair next to Stuhler. When she saw Zahara approaching them, Nalani quickly rose to her feet. "My lady? How did you sleep?" Zahara looked like she had been up all night. "Okay, I guess." "What about you, Prince?" Nalani asked as she attended to him like he was a baby. "I'm still tired." Nalani picked the loose sticks of hay out of his hair, then brushed off his smock and trousers. The prince's brown cheeks turned red when he noticed everyone was watching him be attended to. "Nalani," Stephen whined. She ignored him, and when she was satisfied, Nalani looked over Zahara with the same care. Zahara wasn't as embarrassed as her brother, because a true princess did not walk around with sticks of hay in her hair. "What's going on?" Zahara asked Nalani once her checkup was done. "They sent some men to have a look at Pakistan," Nalani said in a melancholy tone. "And what happened?" Zahara asked, looking from Nalani to Stuhler. Stuhler hopped out of his seat and said, "We're sorry, Princess, but your land was destroyed." Zahara learned from her father many years ago to never show defeated emotions in front of people who were lower in rank and stature. At this very moment, Zahara was ready to abandon the rule, break down and cry in front of everyone. "I'm sorry, my lady," Nalani said, as she looked over to Stephen. The young prince stood fully erect and showed his ability to maintain his composure in the face of adversity. "Are you okay, young prince?" Stephen wore one of the saddest faces Nalani ever saw him wear. Like his older sister, Stephen was taught royal etiquette by his father. Biting his lower lip, Stephen stood firm as he slowly nodded his head. "Yeah, I guess we have to make it to the Kingdom of Soul, like my father said we must," Stephen said. He then shared a look with his sister. Zahara knew her brother was hurting inside, but she would have to wait until the right time to comfort him. Zahara felt really bad for Stephen because he just lost both his parents in one motion, while she lost her mom many years ago and was able to grow up with her father. Stephen will be without both parents for the rest of his young life, which will be hard. "That's right, Nalani, can we leave as soon as possible?" Zahara asked. The tragedy that just transformed their lives was much deeper than people could imagine, sending thoughts of Zahara's status through Nalani's mind. Zahara had now inherited the matriarch title Queen of Pakistan, and it was more important than ever to get the royal children safely to the Kingdom of Soul. Looking into Zahara's eyes, Nalani knew the young woman was trusting in her to get them to their destination, like she promised the king and queen she would. "Yes, my lady, just let me gather up a few things and we can proceed on our journey," Nalani said. She went over to a small group of village women. "I will send some men," Stuhler said. "Thank you," Sahara said, and watched the high priest give orders to a group of men. Sahara walked over to her brother and silently congratulated him on a job well done. She put her arm on his shoulder and walked him away from the rest of the gatherers. "Don't worry, Stephen, it will be okay. Nalani will get us to the Kingdom of Souls safely." "I know," Stephen said confidently. "My mom would not have trusted her with us, if she didn't believe in Nalani." Sahara smiled. "That's right. Now let's try and find some food." To protect the royal children and their guardian, Stuhler picked 3 men to go with them on their journey. Their guide to the Kingdom of Soul was an elder man named Tmus. Tmus was a fast thinker and very familiar with the path to the great city. Being a man of Kelowna tradition, Tmus never learned Musina's universal language, sometimes making his communication with non-Kelowna people near impossible. Gond, the youngest Kelowna to go with them, would be their translator, was well versed in both languages. He was also a respected fighter and hunter. Unlike Tmus, who was a dark brown complexion, Gond was the same caramel complexion as Stephen. Being close in age with Sahara, Gond silently was nursing a crush on the princess. Gond would never have the heart to express his affection for the princess, especially because she was royalty and Gond was a village peasant. The real brawn of the trio was a dark brown Kelowna named Dan Dan. His size and strength gave him many advantages when it came to close-range combat. Each Kelowna wore a pack on their backs, packed with an array of supplies made out of hide. Tmus and Gond also carried poisonous arrows and other small but deadly weapons. While Dan Dan carried a sword, he picked up in a battle in the woods with a group of random scavengers. Nalani got a nice helping hand from some of the women in the village, who packed some fresh fruits, bread, and a flask of water for the travelers. They also packed 2 canvases that could be set up in the rain and other cold nights in the forest. The forest was better traveled during daylight times, making all travelers want to take advantage of those hours. Tmus lead the way, with Gond right behind him to relay messages Tmus might want sent to Nalani, who kept Stephen close to her side, and Sahara right behind her. Dan Dan brought up the rear as their back guard, making the group a tight-knit unit on the move. The 40-foot trees provide them with a nice umbrella to shield them from the sun, but left them open to the large mixture of wild animals that roamed the forest, living off of the vast fusion of Musina's best vegetation. In the distance, calls from different species of birds echoed through the trees. To put the group's mind at ease, Sahara hummed a sweet melody, giving them all their own sense of peace on the trail. When it came to song, Sahara still saw herself as a student of the rhythm, even though she was born in Pakisound, the place known throughout Musina as one of High Hop's traditional cities. Sahara had been attending feast and festivals in Pakisound from before she could remember, and all of that culture still offered a wide range of endless harmonic possibilities. Knowing she will be missing out on all of that stuff made Sahara sad, and when she was sad, Sahara usually sang to herself to kill the ills. For centuries, the indigenous ones and visitors of the city have always been heavily influenced by the soulful rhythms in Pakisound. The culture of High Hop gave the people of Pakisound the power to stand together and the strength to become one. Joyous memories of good food, dance, love, and hope have always been staples of a Pakisound festival. A vibrant city known for embracing all, coming for a dose of festive affection with their brothers and sisters. Now that Sahara was queen of Pakisound, she would be looked at as a teacher of the sound and flow that will band people together under the scriptures of High Hop. With a voice like Sahara's, she never had any problems serenading any listeners, but it was different now. Sahara began with a low hum. "All for you, we will defend for you, we will befriend in the name of you, Pakisound, we will see you again, land of the strong child." Sahara's voice was soothing, nicely blended with some motivation from one of her favorite songs. They walked for a quarter of the day before Tmus said something to Gond over his shoulder. Gond in turn translated Tmus's message to the rest of the group. Tmus say, "A little city is up ahead." "How far away?" Nalani asked, ready to take a break. "Not far," Gond replied over his shoulder. "Will we be welcome?" Nalani asked. Nalani had ventured out of Pakisound only a few times with the king and queen, but never on a journey all the way to the Kingdom of Soul. Nalani was worried about the receptions they may receive at the different cities they will have to stop at. There should be no problems, Gon said in a nonchalant tone. The group was 30 yards away from the approaching city when a voice suddenly called down to them from the trees. Who goes there? Everyone froze in their tracks. I ask again. Who goes there? The question traveled through the thick vegetation. Gon looked at Nalani and they silently debated with each other on who would do the talking. The Queen of Pakistan, Sahara yelled up to the trees, quickly ending their debate. There was no response, as everyone in the group looked at Sahara with admiration. This was the first time Sahara publicly acknowledged her position as the queen. The most alluring part about her statement was Sahara said it with a queen's confidence. Something she would need in the future. The trees began to ruffle as a few camouflaged warriors made their way down some vines. The group was lightly surrounded as the men dropped down brandishing bows and arrows. You say the Queen of Pakistan? One of the warriors asked, sounding like the man with all the questions a moment ago. He was caramel in complexion, wearing green and black paint on his face and different parts of his body. He only wore one piece of clothing, a piece of cloth that covered his thighs and privates. Yes, and we don't mean to intrude on your land, Sahara said. The man wore a puzzled look on his face, but he's Kelowna, he said pointing to Dan. Yes he is. They were sent with us on our journey by their village as our protection, Sahara said, giving the sentry as little information as possible. So if it's possible we ask permission to pass through your land. He looked over to two of his brothers, and said, we must see Naji first. Who is that? Gond asked. Tusi answered him in their native tongue. Tusi may not speak the universal language for his own personal reasons, but he understood it for the most part. Oh. What did he say? Nalani asked. He is their leader, Gond said. Yes, now come with us please, the warrior said, as his backup continued to aim their weapons at their unexpected guest. They walked out of the thick woods, and stepped into a clearing. Sahara, Nalani, and Stephen marveled at the sight of the small village. All movement within the community ceased when the visitors were escorted in by the first line of defense. Small children scrambled to be within arm reach of their mothers, while the men put their weapons in the ready position and spread themselves out. A young boy, who looked to be in his teenage years, ran ahead of the pack to a hut that was situated in the middle of the village. Sahara tried not to stare at the women, who were lightly dressed in the same piece of cloth the men wore, on their bottom half, while they wore nothing on the top. The children on the other hand ran around the village freely with no cloth at all. The huts were identical in texture to the huts in the Kelowna village, but that's where the similarities ended. The huts were made for taller people and looked stronger. What is the name of this place? Stephen asked, sticking close to Nalani. Halal. Welcome, a cocoa skin-colored man said, as he stepped out of the center hut. A woman slightly darker than the man came out and took up her place by his side. Two guards eased their way over to the man and woman, but tried not to look imposing. The man walked up to Nalani and said with a bright smile, Queen, thank you for blessing our village with your presence. Nalani pecan-colored cheeks turned rosy red. No, I'm sorry, but she is the Queen of Pakistan. The leader looked embarrassed, but she is so young. Hello my queen. I am Kinet, and this is my husband Naji. The woman stepped up and took Sahara's hand. Sahara blessed them with her winning smile. I am Queen Sahara and this is my brother Prince Stephen. That is our guardian Nalani. Oh, please forgive me for the mix-up, Naji said, trying to show how humbled he was by the mistake. There is no problem Naji. My guards say you wish to pass through our land, Naji said with everyone in the village watching the exchange. Yes, we are going to the Kingdom of Seoul, and with your permission we want to pass through your land to continue on our journey, Nalani said. Yes, but why doesn't the Queen have a bigger? He waved his hands as if to pull the word out of the air. He means a much bigger group, like most traveling royalty, Kinet said with enough grace to let the average observer know she has been finishing her husband's sentences for years. Pakistan was attacked by the Industriarmy, Nalani said. The mention of the brutal army changed the loose demeanor of the village into a place of worry and fear. Are they following you? A big guard standing next to Kinet asked. No. Not that we know of, Nalani answered. Naji looked over to his wife. whose facial expression was also one filled with worry and firmly stated, "They cannot stay," she silently agreed with him. Many days Naji welcomes his wife's input on the daily activities in the village. When it comes to the safety and security of the people in their village, the decision rests solely on Naji's shoulders. Kinet never questions him on it. Sahara felt the meeting was taking a sour turn. Forgive us for intruding, Naji. If it is possible, we would like to rest for a little while before we continue on our journey, she asked. The frown on Naji's face showed everyone his mind was already made. I'm sorry, Queen, but I will not put my people in harm's way. If I allow you to stay, the Industriarmy will penalize us for it. So please leave our village, he firmly stated. He then clapped his hands twice and the entire village began to transform. The men scrambled, taking up position inside and outside of the village. The women grabbed up their children and ducked into their huts. Okay. We will leave, Don said, catching the eye of everyone in his group. Thank you for having us anyway, Sahara said in a defeated tone. Come, my lady, Nilani said. Putting her arm around Stephen's neck, they followed Tusi out of the village. A few of the village men followed the travelers at least 100 yards out of the village, before turning back and going home to prepare for any more unexpected guest. I don't understand. What was said to make them send us away? Sahara asked with bewilderment in her voice. You will see that a lot, Gon said. Many people are in fear of the Industriarmy. Yeah, but we said we weren't being followed, Stephen said with the same disappointed tone as his sister. This is true, young prince, but people will not want to take a chance, not knowing if we are lying, Nilani said. Tusi said something over his shoulder. He says we can rest a little, and continue on until it gets dark, Gon translated, and they all stopped to relax.
Hey everyone, it's author Everlazt. I want to thank you for listening to Let Me Tell You a Story podcast. Tune in for the next episode. God bless and be safe.